Hello, and thanks for joining me on Music Tech Tuesday. My name is Matthew Westmeyer, and I'm with our Music Technology Department here at UAH. Every Tuesday, over the summer, I'm having a kind of a get-together to build electronics and synthesizers and things. And so today, we're gonna get right back to it. First off, I want to make sure my sound is actually working today. So that actually happened last week. I had just one switch that I've forgotten to flip. So what I'm actually going to do right now is check this feed from YouTube on my phone really quick. And check 1, 2. That looks like it works. All right, cool. So I do have sound today, and I should have sound in the other room as well. So before we get started today, I want to talk about the projects that I have in front of me. What we're building is modular Eurorack synthesizers and their effects modules. What I have in front of me right now is a module that I started last week. Unfortunately, it didn't have any sound, but we can talk about it today. This is the, I'll get a little close up on this. This is the Erica Synths delay module, and hopefully I have all the pieces for this, and I'm going to try to build as much as I can with it. Right now I'm using a printed out bill of materials, which I have right over here, that lists all the parts. So basically I'm going to go through all my components and kind of check them off here on my list as we find them and place them on the board. That's going to be, I know, very exciting, but once we get enough parts in, we can start, doing our soldering and checking, our connections and so forth. Other two things that I have in front of me are some modules that I want to go through and troubleshoot today. These are some recent builds that I did. One of them is the Proc bass drum module, which there's some issue with power getting to the first step in the chain here. So I'm going to go through and check connections on that and make sure I can get this thing working. And we also have the envelope generator, which is very, very necessary in our modular setup. I'm just going to go through and check all my solder joints and make sure there's nothing that really just stands out that's obviously wrong with it, and then we'll kind of go with our handy dandy meter here and test for signal path. Okay, after all that, we do have some things we can do in the studio. Let me go ahead and swap my camera over to the studio cam real quick. I've got a new signal path in there as well, so we'll be able to plug up some of these modules and kind of do a little bit of kind of beginner sequencing with some of our new modules. You'll see there, the orange keyboard there in the back is modular gear that I've kind of made in the past from scratch from VeraBoard, and this stuff on the modular rack that's to the left there are kits that we've been building for this course, or for this summer thing we're doing. So let's get back to it. So what I'm going to do right now is jump over to my capacitors. So I need 47 UF by 25 volts capacitors, which are in this box here. And they are right here on this third slot. So this is a capacitor. This is an electrolytic capacitor, which most of the time these guys are polar, which means they have a little white stripe. They have a positive and negative side. And their spots where we put them on the board are pretty easy to find. They're the big circles there. So what I'm seeing here is C2 and C3, which are these two right here. And they've got a little marking on the board. It's kind of hard to see from the camera angle, but there's a little marking that tells you where the little white stripe should go. So I'm just going to place this one in here, and I'm kind of reaching under and bending the legs of this capacitor out. By the way, most of these little parts, capacitors and resistors, are what we're going to be working with today. All of the little elements that we put in the PCB, they're all purchased separately. There's a couple different websites we can go to for those, but I usually get all of them in bulk because it's a lot cheaper to do that. So that's why I have, swap my camera angle real quick. That's why I have so much stuff in front of me right here, is I have multiple boxes full of different pieces and parts. So to me, this is kind of like putting together a puzzle or building something out of Legos. So I can just go by my instructions here and place the components in. So let's go back to 4725. They also say the values on the individual pieces too here. So this actually says 25 volts, 47, and that's correct. So I'm going to put the stripe where it is marked on the board, and then take the component legs and kind of bend them out, and there we are. So those two capacitors are in. I had a ink pen over here. Give me 1 second. Okay, so on my sheet, I'll go ahead and mark capacitor 2 and capacitor 3 are done. Next one is 10NF. So that would be one of these ceramic guys. I have a space here for 10NF. These capacitors, it looks like I only need one of them, and that goes in C12. These types of capacitors are really tiny. These are ceramic capacitors, and they're not polar, so you can turn them one way or the other. It doesn't matter. So I'm looking for C12. This might take me a little while. So this methodology of going straight down by the book and then trying to find the spot kind of works a little bit better towards the end than towards the beginning. It might actually make a little bit more sense for me to go ahead and put this back and just start up here at the top of the PCB, find the part, and put it in. So right here on the top left corner at L2 is going to be our ferrite bead. Yep, I have two of those that are going in. So I'm going to get my box that I have those in. Okay, so I got to dig through this capacitor box. I put my other components that are kind of like ferrite beads and other types of diodes and things in here with my capacitors, because just for sake of space. Ferrite beads are kind of what they do is you put them next to your power supply and they keep a hum from happening. So it's just basically a filter that prevents hum. And they're surprisingly hard to find. I had to go to multiple different websites to find ferrite beads. And it looks like I'm going to have to dig through multiple component boxes here to find them as well. I guess I put it in my resistor box. Here we go. Okay, and the value of the ferrite bead that I'm looking at needs to be 100 UH. which I don't think that 100% matters for these. So these are the ones I've been using, so I'll go ahead and continue on with them. Just because I've been told by a builder of Erica synthesizers that they all use the same value of ferrite bead, and this is the one that came from the bill of materials on the website. So this thing is, let me zoom in over here. Nice little size there. I'm bending the legs on this component, and this is also non-polar, so it doesn't matter which way I put it. But the thing about these things is the actual metal legs on here can be thicker metal than everything else. So it's, there we go, that's fine. Okay, so that one's in. That's our first one. So L1 and L2. And this will probably also be around where the power supply is, which is right here. Yeah, there's the other one too. Okay, so those components are in. So the Erica Synths modules are the first ones that I've done that have used ferrite beads, but they're also kind of the first ones that I've kind of bought the full kits for and worked with. A lot of the stuff I've built at home has been straight from scratch on kind of boards kind of like this that, you know, you can kind of design your own circuit and place the pieces in. So I'll get to kind of the details of some of those projects here in a little while as well. Okay, let's look at what's next in this little corner. Looks like I have a 100K resistor right there. And I think I had those down already. Yep, I had those down right here. So we had a resistor we forgot. And that's either R23 or R88. It's R65. Okay, so that's weird. So on the board here, it asks for 100K, and it's got a, what looks like a resistor symbol there. And it says 100K, but something don't add up. So I'm gonna look over here for R65. And yeah, that's another 100K resistor. They just had it on a different spot, so that's okay. So we'll put the resistor in here. And make sure the legs of the resistor kind of bend out so that it doesn't fall out when I flip the thing over. There we go. So that's in place. And next we have a diode here, a 1N4001, which I got in this box. Oh, by the way, I should put the ferrite beads up, because that is all of them, and I should mark them off on my list here. Ferrite beads are put back in place. And now we're looking for the diodes. And that is a 1N4001. Got a couple different values copies of those, so I'm just kind of going through trying to find the right one. Here we go, 1N4004. And it looks like on the sheet, oh, I needed 4001, not 4004. Here it is. So diodes are one way. They're so they're what we call polar. So the electricity only flows in one direction with a diode, and it's that way to keep from bleeding back, signals. So VD4. Okay, so there's two of these. There's VD3 and VD4, so we'll find both of those and go ahead and get them in. So on the board here, I do have a, there we go, is that better? On the board here, I do have a little image of where the stripe is on the component. Just like that, and I'll put those two there. And then underneath, bend the legs out. So there's the other one right there. And those are to keep, those are also right next to the power supply. So they're to keep our power flowing in one direction, I think. Again, a lot of this is just me putting together Legos and being extra careful and safe. Okay, so we've almost got this corner completely done here. We're looking for VR1. And those two diodes were VD3 and 4. Okay, so VR1 and VR2 are resettable fuses. So I got those in this box over here. Resettable fuses are a part that I have been a little confused about on what values work and what you're supposed to have, but I think this one right here is it. So ERF RB09030. I'm just going to go with this one because this is the one I used in the last module, and it's fine. At least I hope it's fine. I think it's fine. Okay, there's the resettable fuse. And of course VR2 is right over here next to it. So if you're just now joining us, this is a digital delay module that I'm building. by Erica Synths. This is going to go into a synthesizer module rack and process our sound. It'll be an echo effect. So, hoping we'll get some progress done on it. The cool thing about this board, that if you can see this little tiny piece right here, is another extra small board with a very complicated, PCB work on it. So I just went ahead and paid for that to already be done for us, so we wouldn't have to solder that part. So that one's just going to connect onto this, and then it'll connect onto this panel here. This board itself is a double-sided board. So if we flip it over, all of our controls and things that we're going to add on will be plugging in this way on this side of the board. So we can see where all of our buttons would be, all of our 1/8 inch cable ports would be, and our knobs and potentiometers. So okay, so the both diodes are in, both resettable fuses are in, and now we need to go to this part right here, which I believe that's a switch, but it'll be on this side. So I think we're good to go. I'm gonna go ahead and start soldering. So I'm going to adjust this in my helping hands here to where it's got a good grip on the board. My magnifying glass where I can see a little bit better, and I'll turn on my soldering iron. One thing that is of course important is eye protection. So go ahead and put on the goggles here. And what else do we have? We have our soldering iron, which is in the shot now there, and it is in the process of warming up. Oops, we'll go here. So if you can see, there's all those legs are kind of just sticking up. So we're gonna solder those in place and then cut off the legs. Okay. So what I do with this is I set my soldering iron here in between the little circular pad on the PCB and the actual leg of the component, and I let it sit for a little bit, and then I put my solder kind of in the middle of all that and let it melt all together. And sometimes you just got to be a little bit more patient. Sometimes you can just tin it a little bit too. There we go. Yeah, sort of. That's pretty sloppy, actually. That's okay. We can always reflow solder. Too many of these pieces are close together. Okay. So just patience, letting it all heat up together. All right. Some of these components take longer than others. Like this is the ferrite bead that I'm actually heating up right now, and I've noticed they don't like to heat up as fast as everything else. But you want the component and the pad to be hot so they'll melt the solder That way you'll have a good bond. Just like that. That worked. So while that component's still hot, I'm going to go ahead and get the other leg of that ferrite bead. Yep, that's just the ferrite bead that takes forever to heat up the solder. We'll come back to that one. So these other pieces here should go a lot quicker. And sometimes like that when it melted to the component but not to the pad. Come on. Good connection to the component and the pad is totally necessary. Otherwise, it won't melt and it won't stick. And sometimes it's hard to do. This delay effect is going to have the ability to input CV controls to control the different knobs on it. And it's also going to be able to, did I put that in the right place? I guess so. It's going to be able to sync tempo. So that's an important thing with the echo delay pedal. You want that echo to be on beat with the rest of the music. Otherwise it sticks out like a sore thumb. So we have a clock sync that's also available in this. And that's something that my control voltage controllers that I have in the other room can send. So we can basically take something that's a certain tempo in our DAW, like in Ableton or in Pro Tools, and translate that tempo information to our components via a clock sync, which is really basically a metronome is all it is. It's just a signal that goes, you know, at the tempo, and then the other devices can usually decipher that. Okay, I'm back to the ferrite bead right here, and it's giving me some trouble. Come on, just melt. Okay, I hope I got it. Problem is it's twisted up with this other component here. I'll get this leg of our resettable fuse right here. And there it went. Now this leg can go that way while I solder it. But I fear that that is so close to the other component that they're gonna touch each other. So I'm gonna try to pull this one out of the way a little bit while I solder that one, which is something you want to be very careful with. Okay, cool. They're both in and they're not touching each other. Okay, I got another leg right here. Okay, that's taken care of, and now here's what I believe is the other ferrite bead. Almost there. It's just the pad that it's on has to heat up enough to suck in the solder there. Otherwise it won't bond. Usually when that happens, you see it. Yeah, there it went. It's usually kind of like a little water drop. Almost. And sometimes it just comes all off. Yeah, ferrite beads are just they just don't like to melt the solder the same way because it's a thicker leg. Okay, different technique here. Let's do a more of a rolling technique. Hope you guys can hear me this time around. I'm using I'm kind of going overkill for my microphone in front of me right now. It's a Universal Audio U87, and that's going through a LA2A inline compressor. I did that just because I speak low, and that's part of one of the reasons why I got into digital recording and music technology, is just because I'm familiar with microphones and things that allow me to not have to yell and speak very loudly. At the same time, I have a fascination with recording and music, and I've been recording bands for a long time now. I started out in my parents' garage and have been recording ever since I was 16. Okay, almost at the point where I'm going to start cutting off the legs here, and we'll keep moving. Since this is a live feed, I do have the chat open if anybody's in. Okay, I will kind of periodically glance over and answer questions if need be. So we're soldering the top left corner of our digital delay board here, and this is all the things that are around the power input. So important components here. This is also probably where we would look first if we were troubleshooting this thing, I guess. That's what I'm going to do for my other modules. I'm going to find their power source and just trace back, because both of those modules have a potentially pretty simple thing going on. It could just be power's not getting to it. Uh-oh, I goofed. Too much solder. Okay, so this may be a little rough to fix. So I've got a blob there of way too much solder. I'm going to heat it up and try to kind of take it up the leg a little bit, so maybe it'll thin out. So I'm going to heat up the leg of this component. And the fun thing about soldering is when the metal turns to liquid, it is really just like water, just for a split second. And you can kind of, as long as you can heat it You can mold it and do all kinds of things with it. There we go. Cool. So I just melted it just enough there to make it not touch the component that's right next to it. And hell, the rest of that is fine as long as it's not broke the connection or anything like that. And now everything else, I got one more piece right there. Okay, and now just waiting on that droplet to connect to the pad there. And then there we go. That's in. Okay. Last piece way over here is that other leg of the other ferrite bead. Okay, oh shoot, it went straight up. Okay, again, that ferrite bead, the pad did not heat up enough, so the solder did not stick to the pad. So I'm going back and trying to reflow it, waiting till it does that little droplet kind of effect. There we go. Yeah, that's ugly, but it'll work. Yeah, I can't. There we go. That's a strong connection. Yeah, ferrite beads suck. Okay, so now I'm gonna get my snips here and just snip off the legs. Make it look like a circuit board. That's what's kind of fascinating to me about this, that you know, all this really is a lot of different other little pieces that you connect together and then plug them in basically, and then you cut off their legs here to keep them in place. And that's all a circuit board really is just a whole bunch of different parts all glued together. I do see that did connect right there. So that one just connected a little bit, so I'm gonna just put some heat right there on the pad, do a reflow, do the same for this little spot right here. Let's see something. Let's use our meters. Yep, it's still connected. It's right there in the middle, right there. Might have worked. What I did there is there's just a little piece of metal. Well, it's still connecting them. Or maybe they're on the same pathway and they're supposed to be connected anyway. Just like that and that, that and that, that and yeah. I think so. Yeah, okay. We'll keep moving. This is the part the safety goggles are for, really. Whenever you cut these legs with these snips, well, they'll shoot off sometimes. And while I'm back here, I'm looking at some of my older solders, and I'm just kind of, never hurts to just kind of heat them up a little bit. Make sure they're all connected to where they're supposed to be connected to. That you can kind of shape them a little bit too while you're doing that. Okay. Top left part is done. Let's move on. Let's finish this whole top section here if we can. And then we'll move on to checking some other things too. Okay, so next we're looking at capacitor 16, which is 1 UF. And there should be 2 of them, 16 and 18. So I'm going to go over here to my box of capacitors and look for UF. 1 UF right here. But these are supposed to be ceramic, I believe. Here's one. Yeah, that's a So let's look at the bill of materials one more time. So man, they're just 1 UF. Okay. I believe this is it. Everything else is electrolytic. At least everything else in my box here. I've got a stack over here to my left of components that I just ordered in the mail, so I don't have them organized yet. But I think we're good with these. So one UF 35 volts. These are ceramic, I believe, and they're also not polar, or are they? Yeah, these have a longer leg. That's not right. That's not what I'm looking for. Okay, so what I'm actually going to do is consult my phone for just a second, and we're going to look at the difference between UF, NF, and PF. And after all that boring stuff, we'll go in the other room and make some music real quick. Okay, so if I'm looking for 1 UF, that's 1,000 NF, so that's not over here either. That's weird. I think I'm stumped. I think I have a capacitor that I have not bought yet on here. But that's okay. We'll move on to a different capacitor here, like the 470 PF. Which I believe is in this other box here. Here we go, 470 PF. So you go ahead and put those in. And we'll mark those off. These are little tiny components. Okay, there was that one. C57. C56, if I can find that, will be the other one of these, and we can mark them off and be done. And there it is. Those are little ones. That'll solder fast. Okay, so R96 is right there, and can't tell what value that says. Let me go ahead and check over here. R96 is 2.2K. Now I have two of them. First off, I gotta mark off those 470 PFs that I just did, and then look for my 2.2Ks. So now I'm on to resistors. So I'm gonna look in my resistor box over here for 2.2K, which they're actually in another box over here. So I have these kind of organized in the best way they would fit, which for me it's kind of a combination of my 1 through 1K stuff is on my top row, and then I do orders of magnitude for everything else. So what would be the place where 2.2 would be, it would be the same place 22 and 220 would be in my box here. So that's a convenience and a complication sometimes. Maybe it's up over here on the end. Yep. So 220. I'm looking for 2.2K. All right. R96. Yeah. A resistor is kind of like a well, I was going to explain what it is, but I'm trying to look for it at the same time. Hang on a second, let me find it first. 2.2K. We got a lot of 220 ohms. A lot of 220 ohms. 220K. There we go, 2.2K. So, there should be 2 of these, and they are labeled 96 and 97. I'm about to do 96. And these are standing resistors, just like I did last week. my standing resistors, I solder the one leg on the top first. Just because, look at that. There we go. So, needle in a haystack right now, or 97, wherever that is. So I'm going to move on. I'm going to get something else that's close by here. So, how about VT8 and VT10, which those are two and 3904 transistors. First off, let me mark off that 96 first. Okay, so 2N3904. 2N3904. These are transistors, and I believe these are what we were wanting to use for the super simple oscillator as well. So we'll finish putting that together next time I have guests here. Which, by the way, if you're interested and you're watching this video, oh, hey, Dan. I see Dan's commenting now. Yeah, if you're interested in coming in person, anyone is welcome here. This is in Roberts Hall at UAH, and I'm just in the recital hall. That was my best, most ventilated space for this. But this is really, actually, I was wanting this to be, you know, anyone's welcome to come, and anyone's welcome to work on projects with me here, or help me, you know, with these. So yeah, whoever wants to come, you're more than welcome. There's contact info for me on this YouTube video as well. That way you can get in touch with me. So back to our transistor. Let me swap back over to my close-up. Okay, so a transistor has 3 legs, and it has its own little half circle shape there that we can see over here. This was VT8, which is the, I'm just double checking here, the 2N3906. No, that's VT10. Where's VT10? Okay, so VT10 is the one I have in my hand, 3906. No, 3904. This is why we double check these. Okay, so the 3904, which is this one, is VT1 and 2. So where's VT1? So none of them are up here. There's VT2. So I'll go ahead and just plug that into VT2. So what I do is I take the little middle leg, and I'm going to go ahead and bend it forward, I guess. And I'm going to orient it to where those can go in here. So modular synth building from scratch, or from the components in PCB, is a super fun hobby, and it's a money-saving hobby, honestly. You know, we're building a module here that would probably go for about 300 to 400 bucks. I bought the PCB for 10 bucks and probably spent about 30 on the components. So all this stuff is kind of like that. And it's really fun and rewarding to put together on your own. So next I have one more of these VT1, wherever it is. I bet you one of these clauses over it. There it is right there, VT1. So I'll go ahead and get another one of these. Okay. Okay, so, sorry, I was reading the comments there. Let's see, Daniel Leach is in the chat room. He's a super cool guy. He's got his own YouTube thing going on too. Yeah, feel free to put a link in the chat, Daniel. That's some cool stuff you do. I'd love to share that. What else? We've got our components in. I want to get a little bit more of that cluster right there done before I flip it over and solder. So our two 3904s are done. Let's find the 3906s, which are the other ones there. That's not where I was keeping them. There we go, 2N3906. So 2N3906, same kind of transistor shape. It looks like I just have enough of these. So these go into VT10 and VT11. It's another three-legged guy right here that's a half circle. We're looking for VT10 and 11. So if I had students here with me today, that's what y'all would be helping me with, is finding these parts. And man, I was really thinking if we could do some sort of assembly line, we could be working on multiple modules at a time, and then by the time the hour is over, possibly have a couple done that we can go into the other room and plug in and make some recordings with. But, you know, making synthesizers from scratch, you know, does take a little bit of time. You know, we may finish this today, or it may be, it's probably going to be next week before we finish this one, honestly. There's a lot of pieces here. We're still on the first step. Once we get over to the interface, the UI components, you know, our knobs and stuff, it'll look a lot cooler on this side. But you're supposed to get all the little digital parts in first. So I'm gonna keep going. We've got, which one is it? VT11 is done. So now we got to find VT10. There it is, VT10 is right there. And these are transistors that I'm putting in. And just to remind everybody watching, this is Music Tech Tuesday at UAH if you're just joining us. This is a program that I'm going to try to do every Tuesday from about noon to about 4. And it's just me building synthesizers and playing with them in the studio. This is kind of intended to be a little bit more fun and hands-on with students here. Or anyone who wants to join. If you're involved with music and technology, and you just want to hang out and talk tech while we solder stuff, that's totally fine. Another one of the things I wanted to do in our Music Tech Tuesdays is to also look at some of our different mixing protocols that we have in the studio. One of them is going to be for surround sound and for 3D surround sound or Atmos or spatial audio, whatever you want to call it. We'll start taking this stuff and mixing it like that. And that's something that unfortunately is not going to translate 100% to YouTube. We'll end up that'll be something that's a lot cooler in person, where our people can be in the room in the studio and hear some of that surround mixing. Okay, so I've got my transistors in. Go ahead and put that's garbage. Okay, we've got LEDs and things. Those will be on the other side. I've got some more standing resistors here to put in, and looks like I've got it's VT9. VT8 and VT9 are actually not used. Okay, so just put a little check mark there. Sometimes they'll leave spaces on boards like this where components could go, but they're not actually going there. Okay. We've taken about an hour working on this one module, so I think it's okay to kind of set this aside for right now and maybe take a little bit of a break or a little change of pace. I'm going to go ahead and take a trip over to the studio real quick, but in the meantime, I'm going to do a really quick intermission, and I will be right with you guys. So you guys should be able to hear me now, finally, in this room. I've been kind of working on a good microphone setup that isn't too feedbacky in here. But I did want to give a actual good sound tour of what I've got built over here. And I know our camera can't really zoom in really far to my modular gear here, but I want to kind of explain how things are hooked up in your rack modular world. So the only way to do that is to unplug all the cables I already have plugged in and just reconnect them and just talk through that. So what I'm going to do is pull everything down. And then we'll start again. Except for this cable, this is my cable that goes to Pro Tools that goes to the feed. So I'm going to go ahead and plug that into my output of my mixer here. So let's see if I can zoom in just a little bit more. Nope, wrong preset. Nope. There we go. Okay, so maybe you guys can see just a little bit better. I can kind of turn that too. Gotta be really careful not to knock this whole thing over. Okay, so this is my modular rig. The top over here is mostly stuff that I haven't built yet. So these are the panels of different pieces that I want to incorporate into the summer. It's an ambitious goal, but I think we can do it. Over here on the left, we have modules that I have built from kits. So I have the Sense baseline, which was a very kind of intense build, and a lot of little pieces to that. I have the QuadTech 101 from News Tech or CCTV. Maybe I read that wrong. Yeah, it's by CCTV, and it's a dual oscillator. Both of these two modules are oscillators. The baseline is actually a full synthesizer by itself. And then over here I have the Sense oscillator. So there are three different sounds that we'll be able to hear, just the very basics of kind of what they do. So for instance, and that's a piano. For instance, if we go over to oscillator and I go to, let's say, the sawtooth output, and I plug that into input 1 of my mixer, and then turn that up, you guys hear the buzz of that oscillator. I can change the pitch. And I'm going to go ahead and try to tune that to C real quick. That's in tune there. The only thing about that oscillator is it doesn't have a gate built in, so it's actually going to just keep ringing until we turn the volume down here, which is okay. That needs to get off. Synthesizers, just like any other instrument, you have to tune them. So there's multiple steps to that process. There's also internal tuning, which has to do with kind of intonation, to put it in a guitar term. Your octave higher than what you played can kind of go out of tune as you go up higher. So there's tuning that also can be done there. Okay, so we have octave controls to that as well. We have the ability to do frequency modulation, which is right here too. We'll get to that in a second. We have controls on our keyboards that can control different aspects of that. So that's the saw wave. We have a triangle wave, which is a smoother oscillation, and we have a pulse wave, which also has pulse width. So we think of a pulse wave as a square wave. So you go up, down, and that's your waveform. We can control the size of the two squares independently with this pulse width, which makes a cool little thing happen there. So that's done with a knob. Our octave switch is done with a knob. Our volume to that is done with a knob. Our pitch is done with a knob. Cool thing about Eurorack and this DIY modular stuff is we can send signals called control voltages that can basically interact with any potentiometer. So a potentiometer is actually just the electronics in that knob as you turn. So there's ways to interact with anything on this synthesizer and sequence it from your DAW, basically just using different control voltage signals. This right here, if you guys can see it, I don't want to pull it out because things might fall, but this is the Arturia KeyStep 37. It's a MIDI controller, which means it's hooked up to the computer via USB, and it, hang on a second, zoom out just a little bit. Is that better? Okay. So it's a MIDI controller, just like any of the other stuff that I have here. It all hooks up to the computer via USB. So it sends messages back and forth to the recording software we're using. So I can play something in, it'll record those notes that I played, and then it'll play it back. And that can then come out these little 1/8 inch cables and control the different pieces of gear that we have built. So we have two different cables coming out of this one. One is for pitch and one is for gate. And so pitch is, that's our control voltage, signal. So that means whatever key I hit on this keyboard will send a different amount of voltage to control a different synthesizer. So if and it does 1 volt per octave. So a 12 volt spectrum there, we can do 12 different octaves of triggers, from this control voltage. When I plug this into our oscillator module, there's a 1 volt per octave right here that will connect it to the pitch knob. So when I do that, so now whenever I play on this keyboard, so we've got our pitch data being sent that way. We can do that. Let's try that with another synthesizer. Grab a little bit of a longer cable here. I'm going to go to our baseline synthesizer. It's main out. It's got some more stuff built into it. So I'll plug it into my mixer. There's our sound there. And here is my 1 volt per octave. So my pitch is kind of high up there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit a key on the piano keyboard, middle C, and I'm going to hit middle C here. So I can octave down and get some bassy tones. This one can also add a sub note as well. It has a cutoff, which is used for tone shaping. And it's also got some other things that we'll get into. This other cable that I have hanging out of my Arturia is gate. It's for our gate signal. So I'm going to plug that in here. What that does is that sends a trigger to open a noise gate for the synthesizer. Otherwise, it's going to be muted. And there we go. So now I can play some actual notes that have kind of an envelope already built in of how they come in and how they fade out. So right now it's the longest envelope I can play. And then you can actually include the filter in that. Somewhere over here. So it's kind of working its way in there. So we've got a connection now where we can connect this kind of gear to the computer. What also we can do is we can take our gate signal and our control voltage signal, these two things, and I'm going to plug them in to this unit that I have over here, which is called a mult. It's a multiple. So if I'm connected that way, my control voltage can go over here and into 1 volt per octave of that baseline keyboard. So that still works. If I were to plug in right here, it still works. It still works. But down here it does not. I have a switch that'll actually connect it. So I can actually make that whole row the same controller, and I can send signals out to everything that way. The same thing with the gate here. So now I have neat and clean control of that, and I can also split off that pathway and control something else, such as the other synthesizer. So let's try that. Let's go with our control voltage over here to 1 volt per octave, and let's do our output of our pulse into input 1. So it kind of goes out of tune the farther away from that one note you get to. And that's tuning of the actual oscillator. So to make that totally perfect, we would have to get a screwdriver out and start changing some values for it. But I don't think I want to get into all that just yet. So that one's, I'm going to take that one out. Instead, I'm going to control this other module here, which is the Quad Tech. And it needs an output too, so I'm going to send audio out from the Quad Tech to right here to channel 3. Okay, some sort of a bad cable going on. Let's figure that out. Excellent work. that's just a totally bad cable. So let's get rid of that cable. Okay. Could be another bad cable. Let's try something else. Never mind. Let's try this back over here on this other module. Okay, so I'm gonna have to come back to my quad cut, which happens with this kind of stuff. But the oscillator itself, I'm gonna turn that up, and I'm going to actually take this cable, and I'm gonna connect it to my mod wheel on this keyboard. So the mod wheel control, I'm going to go ahead and connect it down here and bridge across. And I'm going to go to the pulse width modulation and plug it in. So now I have that control here. Where did this guy go? And I can also control the cutoff, the kind of wah-wah effect of the baseline synthesizer. I'm going to take the envelope of the cutoff off and so I'm doing that same control to that synth while I'm doing so we've established what that synthesizer sounds like and what it does. What if I take that oscillation that's coming out of it and plug it back into the baseline synthesizer? We can do what's called FM synthesis, where we oscillate, where we jiggle the frequency. So if I'm hitting a key that just comes out like that, imagine if I had the power to kind of just make little minor kind of wobbles like that on the pitch. Instead of doing it with the pitch wheel, I could associate that with however many hertz of frequency are coming out of this oscillator. So I have to turn it down really low, but it'll actually work as a CV FM control. So if I click that on this oscillator, and I could actually turn this knob to its low octave. And even the pulse width is kind of doing things to it. I'm going to go to triangle instead of pulse. So there's some possibilities with that. That could be kind of cool. So that's some basic routing. We've made a cool patch here with the gear. I'm gonna check real quick and see if anybody's made any comments on the feed. Cool. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I see on the stream, Dan has mentioned, yeah, you guys are welcome to capture some of the sound bites of this for samples or things like that you want to use in your DAW. That's totally fine. Okay. So, I was going to try to keep it a little short today because I didn't have too many people here. Next week when we come back, I'm going to continue troubleshooting some of our proc drum modules, and I'll try to finish up one or two of those as well. I may get back in here and do some pre-recorded stuff, in the next couple days as well. So thank you guys for joining, and if you liked what you're seeing and what we're doing here today, we're music technology at UAH, and that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg of what we do. We focus on all different types of recording software. We're in a wonderful studio here that we use to produce our YouTube feed and teach a lot of our music technology classes. So if this is something that interests you, please feel free to come by and visit on during one of our summer tour days, or any Tuesday during this time. You're more than welcome to come out and have a chat about music technology. Well, you guys, I super appreciate it, and I'm going to go ahead and sign off for now. Thank you for coming, and if you're interested in coming in person for the next week's stream, you're more than welcome to. My contact info is in the notes of this YouTube feed, and thank you very much, and I will see you later.